When Ford bought the race-winning Stewart Grand Prix team in June 1999, ahead of turning it into Jaguar for 2000, its ambition was to create the British Ferrari. But no amount of hype and British racing green could hide the fact that Ford's ambitious plan failed dismally. In its 5 seasons in Formula 1, Jaguar never came close to winning a race. It finished on the podium just twice, and never managed better than 7th in the Constructors' Championship. Ford pulled out in late 2004, selling the team to Red Bull, which, to add insult to injury, soon turned this underachieving team into an F1 powerhouse. Ford is returning to F1 with Red Bull in 2026, so what better time to explain why the Blue Oval's only foray into F1 team ownership was such a disaster. We've picked out 5 key reasons why Jaguar failed so badly in F1. Stewart Grand Prix built a reputation as an effective, efficient outfit in its 3 seasons in F1 from 1997 to 99. It won the 1999 European Grand Prix with Johnny Herbert and finished 4th in the Constructors' Championship behind only Ferrari, McLaren and Jordan. When Ford announced in June 1999 that it was buying the Stewart team that it already supplied with works engines and had heavily bankrolled, it seemed to be great news. As Ford chief executive Jacques Nasser put it, this was all about taking the team to the next level. Ford's target was at least to move up to 3rd in the Constructors' Championship ahead of Jordan in Jaguar's first year. There was even talk of challenging for the title. Given what followed, it's easy to forget such objectives were entirely serious. Although the team continued to operate out of the same ex-Ball bearing factory on a Milton Keynes industrial estate, the same one Red Bull has today annexed most of, there was a warning of things to come, with the Ford Motor Company promising close oversight of the team. A common complaint of those trying to run the team was that Ford interfered regularly, but rarely to positive effect. The race's very own Gary Anderson was technical director when Stewart became Jaguar and left at the end of 2000. He said Ford had no idea of what F1 was about, and recalls being told early on that you will do it the Ford way, or we will get someone else that will. Unfortunately, while the Ford way was well honed for being what was then the world's 2nd biggest car maker, it was ill suited to F1. Gunther Steiner, now team principal of Haas, was at Jaguar from 2001 to 2003 and claimed it was difficult to achieve anything because there was no understanding from Ford. Niki Lauda had a similar problem with a company he suggested was more interested in internal compliance with its own way of doing things than actually winning. Bobby Rahal, team boss in 2001, speaks of struggling to convince Ford of the justification for spending, saying, when you dealt with Ford, there had to be a book of reasons why you would invest in something. We could go on, because again and again the same complaints come from those who worked for Jaguar, that Ford neither understood F1 nor was willing to let the team get on with doing what was needed to be a success. For example, Gary Anderson tells a story of Ford wanting to design the rollover structure for 2000 and it repeatedly failing crash tests. Anderson instructed someone to make a backup design to allow the team to race when it inevitably failed a last-minute crash test, and was admonished for lacking faith in Ford's ability to make a part it really couldn't make. Ford effectively took over an F1 team that was climbing the grid rapidly, and through lack of understanding and excessive interference, turned it into one that regressed badly despite increased spending. The Stewart team was run throughout its time in F1 by Jackie Stewart and his son Paul. But once the team became Jaguar, Jackie Stewart was shifted into a commercial role, and there was a revolving door of leadership that never gave the team the stability it required. Wolfgang Reitzler, vice president of the Ford-owned Premier Automotive Group, was in overall charge initially, although Ford chief technical officer Neil Ressler had direct oversight. Ressler was very well respected in the automotive industry, but didn't have a good feel for F1. He then recruited 3-time IndyCar champion Bobby Rahal as team principal for 2001. With Ressler stepping back from all Jaguar involvement for personal reasons, Reitzler took a more keen interest and brought in Niki Lauda to run the Premier Automotive Group that included Jaguar Racing and Cosworth. The uneasy alliance didn't last long, with Rahal ousted in August after failing to recruit his old friend and former race engineer Adrian Newey, of which more later. During this period, Gunther Steiner also held a senior management role. As for Lauda, he spoke boldly of a new broom for 2003 by dropping drivers Eddie Irvine and Pedro de la Rosa before replacing them with Mark Webber and Antonio Pizzonia, only to be ousted himself shortly afterwards. In total, Lauda reportedly earned around $23 million from his stint with Ford and Jaguar, around a quarter of that for not working in 2003. Towards the end of its time in F1, Ford's Richard Parry-Jones had oversight of Jaguar as Ford's Chief Technical Officer. David Pitchforth, Jaguar Managing Director, and Tony Pennell, boss of Ford's Premier Performance Division, joined forces to run the team, battling on amid diminishing budget and the struggle to bring in new sponsors. They were initially supposed to stay on when Red Bull took over the team, only for Arden F3000 team boss Christian Horner to be brought in as team principal, a role he holds to this day. What possible hope was there of a consistent direction with so many changes of leadership during this period? The most stability Jaguar achieved was in its final 2 years under Pennell and Pitchforth, before the Ford rug was pulled from under them. With endless intrigue in the background and instability, it made it difficult to recruit the right people or create the continuity needed to succeed. In a move that foreshadows the success Red Bull has enjoyed over the past 15 years, Jaguar came close to signing Adrian Newey from McLaren in 2001. Newey was disgruntled with life at McLaren for two reasons. Firstly, the uncertain timeline for fulfilling his ambition of running McLaren, and secondly, a subsequent new contract offer that represented a significant pay cut despite his success. Rahal saw his chance and sold Newey on the idea of joining Jaguar. He signed a letter of intent, as opposed to a full contract, stating he'd join the team. On the 1st of June 2001, Jaguar announced Newey was on his way. Newey was quoted as saying the chance to work with my close friend Bobby, combined with the prospect of the exciting challenge that Jaguar Racing offers, proved irresistible. But ultimately, he did resist. In fact, the day before the press release was issued, he had informed Rahal he wasn't joining Jaguar. This was thanks to McLaren team boss Ron Dennis matching Jaguar's pay offer, which was around 2.5 times what Newey was being paid before, offering the possibility to work on an America's Cup project, and convincing him life under Ford at Jaguar would not be easy. Legal proceedings were launched, and ultimately a settlement was agreed. The knowledge and credibility Newey would have brought Ford's team was priceless and could have transformed its future, provided, of course, he was given the freedom to do what was necessary. One thing that was consistent during Jaguar's 5 seasons in F1 was underperforming cars. There were a variety of reasons for this, not least the failure to recruit Newey and the constant changes in technical personnel. In 2000, Jaguar went into the season full of optimism, with the hope of winning races and perhaps even challenging for the title. But after early season gearbox problems caused by Cosworth fitting a much finer filter on the innovative integrated gearbox to engine oil system, the Jaguar R1 was plagued by a diffuser stall problem that made the car unstable under braking. It wasn't diagnosed until Gary Anderson discovered a fundamental problem with the way the wind tunnel ride height control was operated whilst testing at the Swift wind tunnel in California. Once fixed, the car showed genuine pace, with Eddie Irvine finishing 6th in the season-ending Malaysian Grand Prix. Anderson left Jaguar at the end of the season, part of a near constant churn of technical personnel. For the Jaguar R2, Ford opted for a back-to-basics approach. Reliability was prioritised, meaning early sign-off for key structural features such as the gearbox and rear suspension. The car was more reliable, but it came at the cost of performance because it lacked downforce. It did at least prove it had a good mechanical platform thanks to Irvine's 3rd place at Monaco. The 2002 car, the Jaguar R3, was so problematic that Jaguar seriously considered reverting to the 2001 machine early in the season. Technical director Steve Nichols departed as a result of the troubles, which included problems with parts flexing, notably suspension uprights. There were also monocoque problems, as it wasn't stiff enough around the front suspension mountings, while the simulated downforce gains of 8% compared to the year before actually resulted in a car that had 2% less downforce than its predecessor. At least the Cosworth engine was pretty good, as proved by Irvine's 3rd place at low downforce power-dependent Monza, but the car overall was a disaster. In 2003, Jaguar produced its best car, the R4. On average, it was the 5th quickest of the season, and new signing Mark Webber produced some stunning qualifying performances, notably 3rd at Interlagos and the Hungaroring. But that strength was partly down to how quickly it heated up its Michelin tyres for a single lap, leading to tyre troubles in the race. This made the car something of a qualifying special, and while it scored points in 8 races, it never managed better than 6th place. The car also had a fuel pickup problem in the early races and was unreliable, failing to take the checkered flag 17 times out of 32. So the 5th fastest car managed only 7th in the championship. To make matters worse, the Ford Cosworth engine did win a Grand Prix, but it was in the back of a Jordan in Brazil, courtesy of Giancarlo Fisichella. but hopes were high for 2004, only for the Jaguar R5 to prove a disappointment. The team took an evolutionary approach, producing a car that was solid enough but without producing sufficient downforce. Jaguar therefore regressed, with its deficit to the pace almost double what it had been the year before. With budgets dropping and increasing question marks about Ford's future in F1, Jaguar again finished 7th in the championship, but a much weaker 7th. Jaguar's 5 cars were at worst disastrous and at best flattered to deceive, with even the 2003 car's tyre-chewing tendencies meaning its single-lap pace was misleading. When Ford acquired Jaguar, it did so with grand ambitions, but the struggles to make its F1 team work meant that its interest dwindled. While Ford ownership significantly increased its budget, the increase in spending in 2000 didn't actually translate to much of an improved development budget. Spending peaked in 2002, based on figures from Companies House, but staff numbers and spending dropped in 2003 and 2004 as cutbacks were made. Pennell and Pitchforth gamely tried to make a virtue of these diminished resources, talking of efficiency, but they also weren't exaggerating when they said the budget levels made Jaguar more of a natural rival of Sauber or Jordan than Ferrari or McLaren. Ford decided to pull out of F1 at the end of 2004, meaning both Jaguar and Cosworth were up for sale. While Cosworth was sold to Audi, Red Bull bought the racing team for a nominal fee. Ironically, Red Bull had been interested in buying into the team as early as 2002, having sold its majority stake in Sauber at the end of the previous year, but Lauda's attempts to facilitate a part sale were rebuffed by Ford. Red Bull hit the ground running, achieving something Jaguar never could by finishing in the points with both cars on debut in the 2005 Australian Grand Prix. And the rest, as they say, is history, as Red Bull went on to become one of F1's most successful teams and today's dominant force. And while Ford on paper has a formidable F1 record given the 176 wins for Cosworth developed engines, not a single one of those was achieved by its own disastrous team.